The smoke appeared above paradise before most people understood what was happening. At first, it may have looked like something small, a dark shape above the palm roofs, a smell in the air, a few people turning their heads near the beach. Then the flames grew, and the mood inside the resort changed almost instantly. Guests who had arrived for sun, ocean, and quiet mornings were suddenly being told to leave. Families moved through the resort carrying children, phones, passports, bags, or whatever they could grab in a hurry. Staff tried to guide people through the confusion while the fire moved across the property. This was Viva Dominicus Beach by Wyndham, a luxury resort in Bayahibe on the southeastern coast of the Dominican Republic, a place built for holidays. By the time the fire was brought under control, nearly 1,700 tourists had been evacuated. Several people had needed medical treatment. Buildings across the resort were badly damaged, and one woman, an Italian tourist named Francesca Valentino, had died. Bayahibe is the kind of place people choose because it feels far away from pressure. The water is bright blue. Boats leave the shore for island trips. Palm trees line the beach. Resorts are designed to make guests feel that everything has already been thought through. Rooms, food, pools, entertainment, airport transfers. The small details that turn travel into comfort. People arrive there with simple expectations: a few days away, a family break, a wedding anniversary, a long-planned escape from work, weather, and everyday life. Nobody checks into a beach resort expecting to plan an evacuation route. That is why the fire felt so sudden and frightening. The resort was busy when the emergency began. Authorities later said around 690 tourists had to be moved out and relocated to other hotels and nearby accommodation. That number is easy to read quickly, but difficult to picture. It is not just a crowd, it is families with children, couples separated in the confusion, elderly guests moving slowly through smoke and noise, tourists trying to understand instructions in a place where they may not speak the local language, people asking whether they can return to their rooms for passports, medication, phones, or money. In a fire, those decisions become brutal. You think you have time, then the smoke gets closer, then someone tells you to move, then the room key, the suitcase, the wallet, the clothes, even the documents you need to get home suddenly matter less than reaching open air. Videos from the scene showed large flames and thick black smoke rising over the resort. The fire spread quickly, and authorities said wind and thatched roofing helped it move through parts of the property. That detail matters. Many beach resorts use natural materials to create a tropical look. Palm roofs, wooden structures, open-air restaurants, shaded walkways, and beachside buildings all help create the atmosphere people pay to experience. Under normal conditions, those materials feel warm and beautiful. In a fire, they can become part of the danger. The cause of the blaze is still under investigation, so the fast spread should not be confused with the starting point. Investigators still have to determine how it began, where it began, and whether anything failed before the first visible flames. But for the guests inside the resort, the cause would not have mattered in that first moment. They were dealing with what was directly in front of them: smoke, heat, movement, instructions, and the rising fear that the place they were staying in was no longer safe. Evacuating a large resort is difficult because people are scattered everywhere. Some are near the beach, some are in restaurants, some are in rooms, some are asleep. Some may be in showers, changing clothes, or trying to get children ready. A hotel is not like a theater where everyone sits facing the same exit. It is a maze of rooms, corridors, gardens, pools, paths, stairways, lobbies, service areas, and outdoor spaces. Guests know the parts they use every day. Staff know much more, but during an emergency, even trained staff have to deal with panic, language barriers, smoke, and people trying to go back for belongings. The evacuation at Viva Dominicus Beach became a massive operation. Tourists were moved away from the fire and later relocated to other accommodation. Authorities and hotel staff also had to deal with people who had lost identification documents in the blaze, which meant embassies and travel officials became part of the response. That is one of the details people often miss after a resort disaster. Getting people out is the first emergency. Getting them home can become the next one. Imagine standing outside a burning hotel in another country with no passport, no luggage, and no clear idea what happens next. You may have escaped the danger, but your holiday has turned into a chain of problems you cannot solve alone. Where do you sleep tonight? How do you contact family? How do you board a flight? How do you replace documents? What happens if your medication, wallet, or phone was left behind? For hundreds of guests, those questions became part of the aftermath almost immediately. For staff, the emergency would have been personal too. Our resort is a holiday setting for tourists, but for the people who work there, it is daily life. It is wages, routine, colleagues, and stability. Some staff may have been helping guests evacuate while watching their workplace burn behind them. In moments like that, the line between professional duty and personal shock disappears. You keep moving because people need help. You point guests towards safety. You answer the same frightened questions again and again. You look for anyone still missing. And somewhere behind you, the place you work is being swallowed by smoke. Several people required medical attention. Reports said 3 people were taken to hospital and others were treated at the scene. Then came the detail that changed the scale of the tragedy. One person had died. Her name was Francesca Valentino. She was 46 years old, from Italy, and according to reports, she died after suffering smoke inhalation. A large evacuation can sound like a story about logistics. Francesca's name makes it human. She was not a number attached to a disaster. She was someone who had traveled to a place many people associate with beauty, warmth, and escape. She had people who loved her. People who would have expected messages from a holiday, photos from the beach, stories about the trip. Instead, they were left with the kind of news no family is ready to receive. That is the part of the story no dramatic footage can fully show. Flames can be filmed, smoke can be photographed, destroyed buildings can be counted, but the silence that follows a death belongs to the people closest to the person who does not come home. As the fire burned, emergency teams worked to contain it and keep it from spreading further. The neighboring Viva Wyndham Dominicus Palace Resort was not damaged and continued operating, according to authorities. That contrast must have felt strange. In one part of Bayahibe, tourists were being relocated, treated for smoke exposure, and trying to recover documents. Nearby, the beach still looked like the beach. The water kept moving. Boats still sat near the shore. The same landscape that had drawn people there remained beautiful, even as part of the resort stood damaged behind it. Disasters in tourist destinations often feel unreal for that reason. The setting does not always change enough to match what people have just experienced. The sky clears, the sea stays blue, the palms keep moving in the wind. But for the people who ran from that fire, the place is marked forever. They will remember the sound of alarms or shouting, the smell of smoke, the feeling of deciding what to carry and what to leave. The moment they realized they could not go back to their rooms, the faces of staff trying to keep order, the sight of other guests standing outside with the same stunned expression, waiting for someone to tell them what came next. The Dominican Republic depends heavily on tourism, and Bayahibe is one of the destinations that brings visitors from around the world. A fire like this becomes local and international at the same time. For the country, it is an emergency in a major tourist area. For the hotel, it is a crisis involving guests, staff, property, insurance, safety questions, and reputation. For the tourists, it is a holiday that turned into evacuation. For Francesca Valentino's family, it is something far more painful than any headline can hold. Investigators will have to work through the physical evidence. They will look at the origin of the fire, how it spread, whether safety systems worked as expected, how the evacuation was handled, and what role building materials and weather played in the speed of the blaze. Those findings may take time. They usually do. Fire investigations are careful because the visible damage is only the final result. The important questions are often hidden inside debris, timelines, witness statements, maintenance records, alarm systems, and the first few minutes after ignition. A resort can burn in front of everyone. The reason it burned can take much longer to uncover for guests. The official answers may matter later. In the first hours, survival was more immediate. Find your family, get outside, stay away from smoke, wait for instructions, work out where you are sleeping tonight, call someone back home and tell them you are alive. Some people would have had their phones. Others may have lost them. Some had passports and bags. Others had only what they were wearing. Tourists who had arrived with carefully packed suitcases were suddenly standing outside a damaged resort with the few things they managed to carry out. That image says more than the evacuation number ever could. A beach resort is designed to make people feel protected from the world outside. Guests hand over control for a while. They trust the building, the staff, the systems, and the promise that everything has been arranged. Fire removes that comfort in seconds. The place meant to hold you becomes the place you have to escape from. By night, the resort that had been full of holiday noise had become something else. Emergency lights, smoke, people waiting in groups, staff checking lists, families trying to keep children calm, guests looking toward the damaged buildings, wondering what had been lost inside. The beach was still there. The palms were still moving in the wind. But behind the smoke and the blackened rooftops, hundreds of people were standing outside a resort they had checked into for a holiday, holding whatever they had managed to carry out. Some had passports, some had phones, some had nothing. And somewhere in the middle of all that confusion, one family was about to receive the call every traveler's family fears most.